my channel. My name is Daryl and this is Programming in Any Language. We are currently working with C#, but everything we do here can be done in Java, Python, and virtually any programming language, as you'll soon discover. Let's take a look at radio buttons. Radio buttons give us programmers a chance to move the decision process to the user visibly. What I mean by that is they give us a chance to display the choices to the user. As you can see, radio buttons allow users to select one choice from several possible choices. When a user clicks on a radio button, the program automatically deselects any others. This is known as mutually exclusive selection. It means only one radio button can be selected at a time. When you set up a program with radio buttons, you typically place them inside a group box, tool, or a panel. Let's take a look and see how this is done. Let's take a look at radio buttons. Let's get our toolbox open up here. Radio buttons are found in the common control area. As you can see right down here, radio buttons. However, in order to put them on something, you need a container. So we'll go down to the container buttons right down here. And we can use a group box or a panel. I'm going to grab a group box right now. We'll just pull that thing up. And as you can see, the group box can be moved anywhere on the screen that you want. And it can be sized any way you want. Once you have this in place, you can take your radio buttons and click them on here, as many as you want. And what will happen is you can create a series of, we'll just create a couple of these things right now and pop them on here and place them in place. And let's go ahead and name these guys as we're going through this. First of all, I'm going to take the group box and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to just call it group box 1. I'm going to call it GRP radio buttons. Or let's call it baseball. Just for the heck of it. And it'll be a container that's going to hold those particular things. And it's going to have, I can actually create a name on top of here and use that to establish baseball teams. And that'll show up in my group box right here. And I'm actually going to go ahead and modify the font on this thing so we can see it a little bit better, make it bold, and make it say 10 in size. And there it is right there. If I could grab all of them, I could actually grab all of them. That's fine. I want to create the radio buttons that way too. I can size this any way I want. And I can take these radio buttons now and I can give them names. I like to use RAD for radio buttons. And I'll call it RAD, let's call it Brewers. And we'll call it RAD, in fact, no, let's just call it, yeah, that's what we're going to call it there. And we'll call this one RAD Braves. And we'll call this one RAD White Sox. And leave it at that. Then we're going to give it the name right here so we can actually see these things. So we'll drop down and we'll actually call it Brewers. And this one will be called Braves. And this one will be called White Sox. I can space that out if I want. I can also take all of these and format them by highlighting all of them right here, and I'll format them on the text screen. I think they probably are aligned just fine. I'll align their lefts, and we'll go ahead and we'll make their vertical spacing equal, and then we'll center them. Can I center them on the in the box? Probably not. Well, maybe I can. Let's just try this. Let's try and do the vertical center here. Yeah, it does. It does that nicely. So I can touch that up there, and I can also shrink this box down now so it's proper size. I'm going to save it real quickly. Get an idea what this looks like. We'll run it just to see what you can see on here. And when you run the form, which is a rather large form, you can see you've got this little grid around here, this thing, baseball teams are up here, and you've got these things there. And then one of them is checked, and I can the thing about radio buttons, only one can be checked when they're inside a group like this. So anytime I check one of these, the others go off. So only one can be checked. We'll show how you can use that to your advantage in programming shortly. So let's come out of here. We didn't do anything special just yet. I want to add a label to this thing real quickly. So I'm going to, let's shorten this form a little bit. Form size, let's make it, say, let's make it about 800. And this one about 500. Make it even numbers. I'll pop that in place. Now you can kind of see it. I can even shorten it down more if I want. So let's do that. Now what I want to do is I want to actually create a label down here. So I'm going to grab a label and pop it in the bottom. And this label is going to be, it's not going to have any text in it. We're going to call it label out. LBLOUT. And the font in it is fine too. We're just looking at this font. But I'm going to change the auto size parameter to false. And I'm going to give it a grid, a border style of fixed single so we can see it. And I'm going to size it equal to the group box. And I'll do that by formatting and make the same size on the width. And I'll align their lefts so they're under one another nicely. Then I can take this whole works. Let's shrink the form a little bit. I can take the whole works then and center it on the form. Center on the form horizontally and vertically. There, now it's just there. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of this label that I've got inside here. I don't need to see anything on here, just the fact that it's there. So it's a blank label. What I want to do is I want to go through this process and what I want to do is go through this process, and as I select one of these characters, I want the name to appear in the bottom right down here. So one thing I can do it a couple different ways. I can use a button to do this, or I can use a change event. I want to show you both of these and how they actually work. So let's add a button here. And I'm going to grab this button and pop it down here. And this will be, let's make it the same size as this right away. There, it's there. And this will be a button do it, so I'll just say do it in the text here. And we'll give it that name up in code so I can actually work on it. Notice I haven't written any code yet. btn do it. So it's there. So this thing has been assigned a name, button do it. This is assigned a label, label out. These guys are all radio button White Sox, Rad Braves, Rad Brewers, and so on down the line. The group box I have named as well, but I'm not going to use that in code, although I could move it or I could make it invisible, whatever I wanted to do. So panels and or group boxes make great containers for radio buttons. Now, although radio buttons allow the user to make decisions, we as programmers still need to determine which radio button is checked and then take action based on that. The code shown here does just that. You interrogate the check property of the radio button. If it is checked, you take some action. If it's not checked, you can take a different action or none at all. Let's see how this plays out. What I'm going to do right now is I want this button here to basically tell me which one is checked. So I'm going to actually write some code for this thing. I'm going to go into the button do it here, and I'm going to say if. And we're going to say RAD Braves. We'll look at that for this checked. And we'll hit down here. LBL out dot text is equal to Braves. And we'll put that down there. We'll drop down here and say else if Brewers checked, and we'll say LBL out dot text equals Brewers. Else RAD. Oops, not I need actually, yeah, I can do this right here, and then I could say else, and we can just simply say that LBL out is going to be equal to text is going to be equal to White Sox. And that's the extent of all I need there. So that's all the coding I actually did here. So I wrote in the button to just simply using an if statement to check the value of what's inside here. Actually, I got to make the spelling correct on that thing. So let's save it all. And let's run this. And see what we've got. Okay. I've got Brewers sitting in here. And if I hit do it, Brewers pops up on there. If I happen to click on Braves, I can set that up. Now I can set the do it button and it'll say Braves. I can click on White Sox here and it will say White Sox. And then go back to Brewers, and so I can easily change. All the other ones go off and click on the do it button. And it uses an if statement, if else, to determine what has actually been checked and puts the contents in this label down here. That's one way of doing it. In our example, we used an if else if structure. Virtually any decision structure can be used to interrogate the check status of a radio button. But there's another way of interrogating the check status of a radio button. Rather than a button, we can do it whenever the check status of the button changes. Anytime a radio button's control is checked properly, it changes, a check change event is raised, just like a click event. And just like a click event, we can write code in this event. And we would write that code for every radio button that needs checking. Here's what that is done. Another way is to use the changed event. So if we look at the changed event, we can look at. Let's see, is that going to help? Yes. Let's go ahead and do this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to close the form off. I want to jump into the form. So I've got the form sitting here. I'm going to actually double click on the Brewers radio button. And when that brings up is the check changed event. So what's happening here, it's detecting whether or not I've actually clicked on this thing. So in here, what I can do is I can actually take this code, and because it's detected an event, I can literally take the if statements that I've got here and pop them into this and do a check on that. I can also then go ahead and do the same thing with the Braves, check changed event, and pop it in here, that same if else statement. And I can also do the same thing with the White Sox by creating a check change event. Now what happens if we go back to our form, it's going to run a little differently. We'll save it all, and we'll start it. The form comes up, and Brewers is already listed in there. So I'm going to hit click on Braves. When I click on Braves, it automatically changes the Braves into the label here. Click on White Sox, automatically changes to White Sox. Brewers automatically changes to the Brewers again. What it's doing, it's eliminating. I can still press here. This will still function, but it's already been set. So it makes the button, the do it button, unnecessary. Because quite frankly, my routine is sitting in here checking to see which one's actually been checked, and by using the check change event. So it understands when you made a change to the button. It knows which one was checked, and when something goes off or on, it detects that and can execute code to do that. Now I know it looks a little redundant to look at the code like this. It's the same code each time. However, what we can do later on when we learn about methods, we can actually create a method that simply does this and simply call that one method in here, making it simply a one-line piece of code in here. We'll get to that when we get to methods. We're a little bit advanced for that right now. That's a little bit down the road. But that's all it is. Radio buttons are very, very easy to use, very, very easy to control, very easy to put together, very easy to use too. So you can use the button to actually do it, and you can also click on the changed event that will detect when something's been changed inside the element here, inside the group box. Pretty cool, right? The radio button really isn't needed, or the button really isn't needed. What Well, that will depend on your program, of course. Could be a button is a better choice for some applications, but this shows you that both ways are very effective in checking the radio button status. Now, you've seen all this with the group box being the container. I had mentioned panels earlier. Here's what that looks like. Instead of the group box, I could have used a panel. And a panel looks very similar, does the same kind of thing. I'll just put it over here. Except the difference is, you'll see that in a second. I'm going to grab these guys, do a copy, and pop them in here. And let's run it real quickly just to see what we have here. We've got radio buttons in here. And I'll do a save. Okay, let's run it. You can see the difference between the group box and the panel. The panel, you don't see the border around it. You also don't have a name on top. You still have functionality of being able to click on these things and they'll work. Now, I don't have any code written for these things, so you're not seeing anything happen down here. But it works the same way as this thing. The difference is you don't see the grouping or the box around it. You don't see a name. There's simply buttons out there for someone to click on. This thing still works fine over here. And these things function the same way. We just haven't written any code for it. But that's all it is. That's all it is for radio buttons. They're very, very simple to use. It puts the decision on the user. You don't have, you're writing if statements, of course, in there. However, the user is making a decision on what they actually want to select. They're physically doing it. That's all there is to it. So adding radio buttons to a panel is no different than adding them to the group box. Functionality is the same. The look is just slightly different. Again, that's what you choose depends on your application. We'll look at the radio button's sister control next time. That would be the checkbox control. And it is very similar. For now, what you need to take out of this video is radio buttons allow users to select one choice from several possible choices. A Boolean check property tells us if the control has been selected. If statements allow us to interrogate the check property. Check change events can be raised with when the user selects or deselects a radio button. See you next time. Thanks for watching. If you get a chance, please subscribe. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.